this something you learned? Were you born an entrepreneur?
You got to start small.
I have not allowed being a woman to hold me back.
Credibility is not just making money, it's about making sure that people trust what you're doing.
Law practice is not only about going to court, it's about advice.
It's very difficult to hire somebody who's not motivated and then make them motivated.
One of the things that I'm known for is integrity.
They have to see you as a person of integrity.
Hello and welcome to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshira Addo, your thought leadership show that brings you nuggets of insights from the lives of men and women who've scaled the daunting heights of either starting their own business or managing institutions here at home and around the world. My guest on the show today is a young business leader specializing in education technology. He's an authority on the subject matter and the founder of eCAMPUS LLC, Cecil Sena Nutakor. You're welcome to the Executive Lounge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, the story around eCAMPUS is a very interesting thing in that it was inspired by your own challenges at finding an optimum approach to learning. And fixing your own problem, you realize you could fix other people's problems. But help me appreciate what goes into making a technology platform a tool for learning.
All right. Okay. So if we say technology, we shouldn't limit it only to digital-driven technologies or smartphones or anything. I keep saying even the chalk and the chalkboard is a technology. The pencil, the crayon. So technology as a tool for education has always been with us. The interesting part is, as technology evolves, are we evolving our educational structures, infrastructure, human capital to adapt and keep up with the evolution of technology that can be used to help education? That's the challenge. We're comfortable with the chalkboards, and then we went to the markers and the whiteboards. Now crayons to pencils to pen, and then to typing. Right, and then now you don't even have to type, you can think and then it will type for you. Right, you can speak and it will type for you. So just all you want to do is to write, but technology keeps evolving where you can actually write without having to use the crayon. But as a society, as a people, how have we accepted this advanced or evolved technologies into the education space? So that is the challenge or the opportunity that we need to play around.
I like the sound of opportunity. How would you, paint us a picture what the kind of technology that you use for eCAMPUS, the online platform that helps junior high students and senior high students to master and prepare for their own exam. How are you leveraging this technology, and what is the opportunity in there?
So generally they refer to these technologies as exponential technologies. And exponential means that 10x, you know what I mean? So anything that can evolve within a space of 1 year, 10 times what it was before. And then the next 4 years, it goes 100 times what it was before, like kind of results it can get. So some of these technologies that fall under exponential are artificial intelligence, blockchain, virtual reality, augmented reality, right? So these technologies, some of these technologies fall under what the term exponential technologies. So what we use at eCAMPUS is artificial intelligence, virtual reality, augmented reality, and blockchain. Now, to take artificial intelligence, for example, what it does is that it's able to analyze huge sums of data and try to make sense out of them. So in preparing people for any standardized exam, it's not only junior high, senior high, the nurses also, right? The midwives, MVTI, ACCA.
So pretty much any standardized test.
Exam, even the pilots, once to renew their license, they write the air law, law school. So any standardized test. What happens is they generate a lot of data. So if I interact with test questions and I'm shading the correct answer, it's data I'm generating. That in a traditional sense, a teacher will have to mark, generate another data. And then now another teacher or a supervisor will have to analyze that data and then award you what? Grades. That's another data generated. Those grades can then be compared across different law schools. Another data is generated. Then they'll say, okay, this law school is better than that law school. Or it can even be compared across the continent. And they'll say, this country produced the best lawyer. So it's just data that's been generated everywhere we go. Now, how do you feed this data to a machine who can analyze it 100 times? 10x, 100x, exponentially faster than that supervisor can analyze and get you trends quickly. So that's an exponential technique. That's what artificial intelligence does.
Okay.
So instead of shading on a paper, we are saying download an app called eCAMPUS. Go to ecampus.com.gh and download this app. When you sign up, you see a lot of subjects, a lot of courses. The one you are interested in, subscribe to it. Then start interacting with the assessment tests. So in this case, start shading to generate data. And after that, immediately interact, it marks and gives you your score. So that other data has been generated. That score is tied to your ID. And each mark you get or each point you get, it is tied to a topic. So if I feed this data to the artificial intelligence, it's able to analyze it exponentially within seconds, and then tell me that, oh, you are weak in topic A, but you are strong in topic C. You are average in topic B. But to pass the standardized exam, because there are more questions from topic B, I will advise you spend 6 more hours on topic B to improve your points by 60%.
Wow.
Then you can pass that standardized exam because it's able to analyze all that data. Before artificial intelligence, some humans has to sit and analyze that days, months, to be able to tell that student the same thing. But here we can tell you in a week, in a day, in an hour, in a minute. So applying this technology as a tool to just analyze that raw data that would have been generated anyways is what makes us different.
Wow. So you take the data, you feed it into this computer, it's able to see patterns,
Exactly.
and you drill down from these patterns and you're able to pinpoint success rate, where people need to up their game, and be able to pass a standardized
And
test.
make recommendations.
Right. And so this is from the perspective of a person who is signing on to use it, an end user, or a prospective exam
test taker.
A test taker. That's right. Now, say I'm a teacher and I'm in a school environment and I deploy technology. How can I leverage this technology to help me get the best out of my students and help them be well-rounded individuals as they go through the education?
That's a very smart one. Every teacher wants to help their students, right? But back in school, I thought teachers didn't want to help me. But now I realize they really
wanted to help you.
But they are under-equipped. They don't have the necessary tools to help you the best as they can. So the best tool in a traditional environment would be the teacher gives you a lot of assessments, right? So that he'll mark it and then do the comparison and say, oh, looks like this child is weak in this topic and strong in that topic. So if you multiply that child by 20, which is the number of students he has to deal with in a day or in a week, his ability to identify those strengths and weaknesses will be limited, because he's human or she's human. They have other things to do. They spend maybe 4 hours teaching, another 4 hours for their life. So they will not be able to identify enough of that. So then it becomes difficult for them to help the way they really want to. But with a tool like eCAMPUS, Nile, which is our artificial intelligence, will be able to tell this teacher within seconds, within hours, depending on the number of students, who is strong here and who is weak here, and even group them so that the teacher will then make it easier in a way that instead of teaching only one topic a day, he can now teach about 4 topics, because he can group the students based on the strengths and weaknesses around those various topics and just have to supervise them. Because the children that are good in those topics will help the others who are not good. And that develops into a whole different environment. So 4 topics a day compared to 1 topic a day. This is the kind of power or the kind of enhancement teachers can get if they adopt eCAMPUS as a way of identifying how best to deliver.
So what you're saying is that exponential technologies in education has a way of not just empowering the student, but also creating a situation where the teachers now have better information and insights they can now use to direct these students.
And makes their work much more easier.
So it's not as scary as we used to think.
No, it's not. Because the teacher would have marked anyways. You're just marking it on his behalf. He would have to analyze the marking and give grades. He would then have to analyze again and group the weak students. You've done all of that for him. So now he has time to actually improve himself, learn new things, do research, and then spend more time with the students, which he really wants to do. Right? Because he has to mark. You tell them
that time is taken
You tell
away.
them to put their head on the table and sleep, so just so he can mark.
So how will all of this impact, overall on human capital development? And think about this against the backdrop of a continent that currently has 1.2 billion people on it. By 2040 or 2050, we would have doubled the youth population. We'll have a lot more people. How exactly will our human capital development index improve with these growing numbers against exponential tech?
So, as a company, our vision captures this. And then sometimes people go like, how are you going to do that? So we want to make learning adaptive, personalized, and informally accessible.
Wow.
To 1 billion learners by
Okay.
2040.
Okay.
Because by then we would have doubled our population as a continent. Adaptive, personalized, and informally accessible. Which means I don't need to go to a 4-square block to call it a school. I don't have to move to any. So informally accessible. And it's personalized. So I learn based on my strengths and my weaknesses. Right? I learn at the time I feel like learning. I learn on demand. Something just crossed my mind. I say, how was that? Then I check it. I learn immediately. It's adaptive to my way of learning. If I learn best through videos, then Nile will feed you more videos. If you learn best through podcasts, Nile will feed you more podcasts based on your strength and weakness. If you learn more through discussions, Nile will suggest who you should be chatting to.
And Nile is your
Is
artificial intelligence engine.
Yeah.
Okay, so IBM has Watson, you have Nile.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So when you create such an environment, learning, the dynamics of learning or schooling begins to get disrupted. So I tell people, by 2040, instead of students or people going to schools, how about schools following students? Have you thought about that?
That's interesting.
Instead of dropping your child off at school, how about the school following your child wherever he goes?
So
that's what Nile does.
you can have children who are, not necessarily within a school environment. They might be out and about hiking, but there's a time period in the day
they get
where
prompted
because of the power of technology.
They need to do that if they want to keep up with this point and be able to get this mark. So Nile is that school that's following your child everywhere he goes.
This sounds like the perfect fix for the so-called millennial challenge. Or that younger people today don't have time to sit in one place and all of that. So,
but they still need to get things done. So this is how it fits into the Africa story, where we have a very young, vibrant, and ever-growing population that, for reasons beyond their own control, have limited infrastructure problems, limited opportunities, but very ambitious. The one thing that they have is their mobile phones, is the smart devices, because they're getting cheaper, internet is getting more accessible. So by 2040, the access to internet and access to smart devices will be as equally a human right as today access to medicine and shelter is a human right. When we get there, infrastructure like road network wouldn't be as much of a human right like the smartphones and the internet. So they don't need to have to drive on a road to school. So if there is no road, that's fine. The school is following me anyways. Right? If there are no classrooms, because we are not producing enough cement to build our own classrooms. So if there are no class, it's okay. I have Nile. So that solves, it takes away the infrastructure challenges that kind of limits the human capacity development or limits the speed of the human capacity development we need to catch up with the demands of our own population.
So if you have internet penetration going up, smart devices being readily available, what it means is that in some places today where maybe
You have to walk through water
just to get to school,
I want to go to
school
that
will
stress.
be in their home with them.
The school is with you. So then when you get that, then they can then learn and figure out, how do I build a floating bridge? So that it's not about going to school, but I just want to go see my friend. I miss him. He's always on me, and we've done screen too much. I want to see him, but I don't want to get wet. So how do I build a floating bridge? And he goes, oh, Nile, what goes into building floating bridge? The Nile says, okay, you need to learn structural engineer, you need to learn float engineer. He goes, oh, okay, Nile, this is interesting. Then he started learning it, and before you know, he's built his floating bridge.
It's impressive stuff. I mean, I've got all kinds of data just jumping in my head right now because, you know, if we go 2 steps back to your description of how a teacher could leverage technology to group students and be able to teach multiple subjects in a day.
Yeah. Multiple topics.
Multiple topics in a day. And bring people together.
Yeah.
That creates a collaborative environment.
Of course. Soft skills.
Exactly. And it leads me to, you know, the World Economic Forum, you know, talking about how the future of work is going to be impacted by a number of skills, which includes the ability to communicate, the ability to think creatively, critical thinking and collaboration, compassion, all of these soft skills that are required. How will technology that doesn't allow you to interface? People think that, you know, we're becoming more antisocial because we're spending more time on the screen. Will this be able to bridge that? Can we use technology to the extent that we don't feel the potential negative effects of dehumanizing our interactions?
I'll quote the late Kofi Annan, who said, literacy is the bridge from misery to hope.
Wow.
Let that sink in. Literacy is the bridge from misery
To hope.
to hope. We've had human interaction for how long?
Ever since
Thousands
Adam
and
and
thousands
Eve
of
arrived.
years. Do we still have misery? Do we see misery? We still, because we have high illiteracy rates. Very high illiteracy rates. So there's misery. Just go beyond Accra. So much misery. And those people have given up. Most of them, again, they don't even have hope. So they are willing to walk through the desert, die in the Mediterranean, just to find hope. So if I'm going to put you in front of screens for 4 years, 5 years, so you can become literate, I have hope you've solved the human interaction problem. I'll leave it like that.
And on that note, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we'll be learning more from my guest on the show today, Cecil Sena Nutakor, founder of eCAMPUS LLC. And we're generally learning more about the place of technology in human capital development. Stay tuned for more. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Shira Ado, and my guest, Cecil Sena Nutakor, founder of eCAMPUS LLC. Now, you quoted the late Kofi Annan, and that's a very poignant point, that literacy is the bridge
From misery
to
hope.
We have a continent with an ever-growing youthful population. They're super ambitious. We have the Continental Free Trade Agreement, an area starting later this year. Now, how can technology aid cross-border collaboration? I mean, we keep talking about trade across borders and, goods and services moving freely. Can knowledge also be transferred across the continent off the back of technology?
Of course. I think technology has demonstrated that it has no borders. It doesn't need a passport to move around. Right? We've seen that severally. We've seen people in their bedrooms, right, playing with makeup and earning thousands of dollars on YouTube because they're being watched all over the world. So that has already been established. Now, my concern here is if the person doing that makeup in their room were not literate enough to communicate what they were doing effectively, they won't get those 20 million followers on YouTube. So we need to look at it from how do we get our population to be at least 50 to 70% literate. And if I say literate, I don't mean to speak only English. It can be very, very literate in any language, in Ewe, in Twi, in Ga. Being literate goes beyond just reading and writing. It includes critical thinking, includes being aware of yourself, your environment, your ambitions, the people around you, your growth, how you impact society. That's what being literate is about. So if you can inculcate this into your population and they get hope, the rate at which they will drive development in a decentralized manner will amaze the whole world.
I like when you talked about language, that, it shouldn't be a limitation. How can, so this is the image forming in my head. Let's just say I only speak Ga. And I have a brilliant idea. And I'm, off the back of technology, connecting with someone who only also speaks Kiswahili. At what point can technology be able to help the two of us synergize and collaborate? Considering the fact that we both want to do the same thing, but the de-link in all of this is that we speak two different languages.
So the very basic is there are a lot of translators. It's very easy to translate any language these days. Very easy to translate. Right? Now we even have devices where you put in your ear, and as I'm speaking, it's translating in real time.
Okay.
All right. So that's not a problem. But the interesting thing is this: if you're literate and you're trying to design a bridge, and you are collaborating with somebody who's also literate but speaks Kiswahili and you speak Ewe, engineering is a language. Once you understand the symbols, you understand the calculations. You guys don't even need to speak a single Ewe or Kiswahili. You work effectively. But if you're not literate in engineering, that becomes a problem. There's something simple that they send you, E-MC square equal. Then now he has to explain himself, That's where the Kiswahili or the Ewe will really matter. But if you are literate, E square, MC square, you don't even need to open your mouth. You get it. Then you start calculating. Before you know, you guys have built that bridge without ever meeting each other in person. That's why the literacy is so important to me.
And literacy, as you did say, is not about being literate in a language, but it's in the subject matter that you want to work with. Okay. So I'm hearing all this, and I'm excited, about all of this. What have you identified as potential barriers that would limit this opportunity for us that we can use to leapfrog?
It's the fear of the unknown.
Really?
It's the fear of the unknown. Those who make decisions, those who are in the powers of the power, the corridors of power, who are supposed to make these bold decisions, are afraid of the unknown. And that limits everybody. They are daring, right? They really want to get things going, but they are being cautious. But I think they are being more cautious than being daring, just because it's uncertain. Nobody has done great things by being cautious. You take that leaps and you deal with the consequences and you fix it along the line. Simple decisions have made Ghana as a country spend 10 times more than what they should have been spending on education, and getting what? 50 times less the impact and result they should have been getting.
So caution has created a situation where throwing bad money after bad money.
So let me give you a typical example. I keep saying this everywhere. A couple of years ago, I'm sure maybe I wasn't even born, a director general or a director at Ghana Education Service, maybe and his team, decided that it was unsafe for senior high school and junior high school students to use smart devices. Maybe at the time, yeah, it made sense, because all the smart devices was to make a call or something, and that would distract them. Today, 2020, that decision has not been overturned. In Singapore, every classroom is aided by smart devices and technology tools like Nile, because tools like Nile need smart devices to operate. So if you're not allowing people to bring the smart devices into the classroom, into the schools, people like me will not develop the tools that will run on them to help the ecosystem. Because when they try a few years and they are not getting breakthrough, they give up. Some of us don't give up. In Singapore, these things are allowed. So in 2015, when BBC did the rating on science and maths, Singapore was first, Ghana was last. Nigeria didn't even make the list. You in Singapore, we all getting independent around the same time, right? We're even ahead of them.
The country is the size of Accra.
We're even ahead of them. They have allowed the use of these tools in their classrooms. And they've taken away things like first, second, third. No. You are strong in this topic, you are weak here. So everybody is good at something. So everybody feels good about themselves in school and they help each other. They've taken out all those things. We are still doing that. And a group of people who decide that this device shouldn't be used in our classrooms. Today, it's still the same. It's not being reversed. It's not even a legislative instrument. It's just some director general or director. And that is putting us at the bottom of science and maths since 2015. And we know. And we just laugh about it as a country. When BBC say, we just laugh about the country. And we are still there. And nobody is saying, let's reverse this and bring these devices into the classrooms and just see what happens. Because they're afraid of the unknown. Hey, what if? Hey, what if? What if? Try it. If the devices are there and I bring my tool and we discover that they find a way to abuse a certain feature, we fix it. We improve it. You get feedback from the users. Within a year or two, we'll have a near perfect system that works for our environment. But if you say because you don't know what will happen, so we should just stay at the bottom of science and maths, yet we want to build factories. With which human capital? Who is at the bottom of science and maths? Or you bring the Singaporeans to come and build the factories for you. And employers will be pushing wheelbarrows in our own country. Then you say you want to develop the country. So we should trust you. When simple decisions like bringing technology to the classroom so that we'll stop being last at science and maths, you are afraid to undo that decision. I don't get it.
You know, you raise a very, 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 very important question, that the fear of unknown can cripple you and as an individual. But I've never really thought about it on the scale of a nation.
I give you another simple example. I give you a very simple example. Every year, how much do we spend on printing textbooks, both private sector and public sector? How many trees need to die? And how much carbon goes uncaptured by those trees? And you complain Accra is hot. And you complain bushfires. There's so much dust. Because you're cutting the trees to print books every year. And when the rains come, the kids don't hide. They enjoy the rain. So all the books go bad. And then you print more. And if there's a mistake in one chapter or one page, the entire thing needs to be reprinted. Or you leave it like that.
Whereas today,
if there's an upgrade in the curriculum, because you don't have money to print, you keep it for 6 years before you upgrade. You are behind. Whilst if you could have digitized that, you're saving trees. You're becoming carbon neutral, and that comes with a lot of benefits globally.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how we do our calculations.
If we take let's go into the space of artificial intelligence and machine learning for a moment. That this is the ability of computing power to analyze patterns, provide insights. Of course, if you can take insights or take data, turn it into information, have insights, then you can make proper decisions. Okay. If we take the outcomes of all the various decisions we've made around our education,
Yeah.
do you think that there's a confluence or a point where we can affect decision making at the policy level based on the application of technology?
We're getting there. These days, when I go to conferences, people push me on the side. They're like, we are listening. No, it's not like we are not, but it grinds slowly. I'm like, yeah, I'll keep talking. All right, we'll get there. But then it takes people in the private sector who are willing to bend the oil for zero rewards. People like myself. I've been at this since 2003. All right. So ideally, if we didn't have those decisions, maybe I should have been impacting Kenya by now. But I should have taken the entire West Africa head on, because the same problem there. They've all made funny decisions like that. Right. So at the point, naturally, you want to give up and go into an industry where decisions are made to make it easy for you to move. But if somebody doesn't do it, nobody gets it done. So over time, now we're glad that some private sectors are working hand in hand with us, the likes of Vivo Energy, right, the non-governmental institutions like ABCDE, who are trying to finance or pay for these students to use the platform so we can also pay our bills, and then be able to generate all this intelligence over time, and then we'll publish reports, do symposiums, invite the decision makers to see. Even in our small corner, the Ghanaian term, right, with about 20,000 students on our platform over a period of 16 months, 18 months. These are the results we are seeing. How about piloting or experimenting this on the national level for a year or two and see what works? So that's the path. So it's at that point where maybe there's going to be a wake-up call where then technology will triumphant, and then that fear of unknown may be reduced, and the technology will break that ceiling.
All the technologies that we're seeing today, in fact, the world has been impacted greatly by the internet.
Of course.
The fourth industrial revolution sits on the internet. But the internet itself, in its original state, at its infancy, was actually a tool that was being used by a small section of a society. Not even 1% of that society had exposure to it. And I'm alluding to, must R&D be expensive? If we want to do away with the fear of the unknown, and we kind of want to dip our little finger or our toes in the water to check the temperature, how would you approach doing that so that it doesn't break the bank, but hopefully we get the best out of it?
So if I were in a position of power to make decisions that affect the nation, because I'm not, I would look out for private sector individuals who are daring to meet the bull by the horn. All right. And then leverage on those private sector people or individuals or institutions and use them as our national R&D. By giving them grants, taking off some of the restrictions to allow them to run the R&D on behalf of the educational ecosystem of the country.
And this is something that can be replicated across other sectors.
In the end, it's contained. And whoever is driving the private sector has the passion, they have their own structures. All you do is to take away some tax reliefs, give them some space, allow them, give them some authority to enter schools and sign up a few students. Let them drive it, and then mandate them to submit quarterly reports, reviews, do stakeholder engagements. Within 18 months, you will see whether it will work or not. So that government doesn't have to launch a whole project. You know how it is, because then that comes with a lot of budget allocation and they have to fight it in parliament, decide. So just identify private sector organizations or individuals who have demonstrated capacity that can be supported and boosted. Then that becomes the R&D of the country. That's what I would have done. I was working somewhere in maybe Jubilee. I would have made that decision.
That's very interesting.
I'm too far away from that.
No, but I think it's a really cool idea. Technology is here to stay, whether we like it or not, whether we're afraid of it or not. Those who are daring enough to play around with it are doing some great stuff. I mean, the Singapore experience just wouldn't leave my mind. We're often told, oh, don't expose children to smartphones or smart devices. Are we listening to the right voices? Is that admonishment fit for use?
Okay. So there are two things. If that device is off, it's useless, it's nothing. So if you say don't expose the child to the device, I don't know what you're talking about. If you say don't expose the child to certain content on the device, then we can have a conversation.
Okay.
I put off my phone, I put off my tablet, it's useless. The worst the child can do is to hit on the floor and play with it. So if they don't expose them to smart devices, be real. Don't expose them to what? Adult content on Facebook. Don't expose them to what? People they don't know on Instagram. Don't expose them to what? Lifestyles they are not comfortable with on Snapchat. Be specific. Then now come and tell me I shouldn't expose them to what? A virtual reality lab on acid, base, and salts on eCAMPUS. You can't tell me that.
So it's the content, it's not the device.
It's not the device. So on radio, I promised to tell you the other two things eCAMPUS does, right? Using technology. And that fits into the Singapore story, just to close it up for you. If I give you a device and I limit what the device can do, which we can always do, even at the hardware level, at the MAC address level, you can't use it for what? You can't use it for content that you are not expected to see. That makes it still a device, but it gives you only content that which perceive is good for you. So the second thing we are trying to achieve, beyond the predicting of whether you pass or not, where Nile helps you to know that, is to create employability scores. In finance, before you take a loan from any financial institution, they check your credit score, right? So why don't we have employability scores? If I want to employ somebody today, it's either I call a friend I know, or do you know someone can do this, or I throw out an ad and 20 people come and I interview and they tell me things that I can't even verify, and I try them 6 months down the line, I realize I made a mistake, I start the recruitment again. Why don't we? Imagine that's how the financial sector works. They would have broken, right? So what we've done now is, for the tertiary institutions or tertiary students, we're encouraging them that from level 100, start taking our employability assessment test. It's a mixture of soft skills. If you want to focus on marketing, want to focus on finance, management, hospitality, start taking those employability assessment tests. Over time, you'll be building a score for yourself. So that even if you're still in school, and as an employer, based on my capacity, I want to employ people with employability score between 100 and 400, because that comes with a certain pay grade. Those between 600 and 800 come with another level of pay grade. People can just go on there and you match the two. That requires that these kids or these students or users have devices on them. So if you're telling them they shouldn't have access to devices, you are limiting them or depriving them from what? Being employable. You are depriving them from being what? Aware of whether they are ready to pass exams or they will do well in school, which areas they need to improve their lives. You are depriving them of that. And that's a human rights issue that requires legal action. That's a crime.
They're putting impediments in people's
That's a
way.
crime. And it's being committed by those you've entrusted your life to, your future to. Now, the final thing we're doing with eCampus is to close the loop and allow people to get instant reward for learning. The millennial or the thereafter, they want instant gratification. It's funny how people can be commit suicide if they don't have enough likes on Twitter and Facebook. And that's how instant they want stuff, right? So using blockchain, the points you earn on eCampus, beyond it making you employable and predicting, what if I could trade that point for mobility, an Uber ride? Trade that point for a plate of Asanka Local. Trade that point for paracetamol. I have learned something. I've earned points. So I go to the eCampus exchange, just like the stock exchange. Maybe in the morning, a plate of Asanka, because of demand, will be around 40 points or 400 points on the eCampus.
And you can
but in the
afford it to
afternoon,
get it.
because of demand, it could be maybe 1,000 points. Just very flexible. And if I feel headache, I'm walking to school and I feel headache, I don't have money in my pocket. Why can't I trade the points I have earned by learning something to get paracetamol? When you close the loop like that and put in the context of the African free continental trade, where when I'm learning informally, independently, and I know when I'm ready to go write an exam, so I save money not registering 3 times and keep failing, and then I know my employability status. And if I'm hungry, I can trade my points and eat.
As a big revolution.
And now my governments have agreed that I can just cross any border and live anywhere. Imagine the Africa we're talking about here. And now today, we are the largest market in the world. So if I'm born into the largest market in the world, and I can learn from anywhere and know when to write my exams and proceed, and know how employable I am, and then trade my learning points for basic things like mobility, healthcare, entertainment, food. Who doesn't want to live in Africa?
I definitely want to.
That's Africa I'm promising them.
I like that. Well, we're going to take our final break. This is just mind-blowing, and there's more to come after this break with me and my guest on the Executive Lounge. Welcome back to the Executive Lounge with me, Inshirado, and my guest, Cecil Sena Nutakor, founder of eCAMPUS LLC. You know, I like the fact that, you know, the references you've made. Of course, you built eCAMPUS, so it becomes readily, but where else do you see exponential technology applied to our development?
Healthcare.
Okay.
Healthcare. Very, very much. I'm so passionate about healthcare. We've seen a lot of exponential technology help our agri sector with all the agri-tech companies that are coming up. You see how they're making things more precise, more accurate, predicting the weather, helping the farmer, that kind of stuff. Health tech. Health tech is very important because so many people die because of the wrong diagnosis in the first place. Because things are changing.
Which is insight from data.
Yeah. So you come and you say, Ghana is like anytime you're warm is malaria. That's it. Right? Like, yeah. Right? And I'm not saying professionals don't know their job. But I'm saying before they bring the person to the professional, what technology is there for the people at home to get the right diagnosis? Because people only go to the hospital when it's worse. So make that kind of data available to them. Right. So if you look at most of the phones, the smart device coming out, they all have this thing that check your pulse, check this and feed into your health stuff. They're trying to build your health data for you. But where's the bigger data to plug it in so that we can make decisions? So health care, very, very, very important. Another aspect where we need to embrace the use of exponential technology is transportation, mobility. It's affecting our productivity as a country. I don't know if you can sit down and calculate the amount of time people spend sitting in traffic.
Well, I can tell you that
And
personally.
they get to work and they spend only 2 hours working because they have to start running quickly to avoid the traffic that you'll never avoid.
Well, I took a day trip to an event that I spent under an hour at in the Western region. From the time I took off to the time I got home, plus 1 hour stop for the break and lunch, took me 13 hours, 48 minutes. Accra to Takoradi, less than 300 kilometers. So this is just on a trip, but imagine work.
Calculate that on productivity.
The stress.
You see where I'm coming from? So we need to need to start feeding some of this data into maybe deep learning, machine learning, to try and create some patterns. Based on the patterns we identify, then we'll even know. What if I can tell you the number of cars on the road with only the driver in it? Do we have that information? I'm not saying we should do anything extraordinary. Let's get the data first. The number of cars that is only the driver that's sitting in it. And the number of cars that has maybe only 2 passengers. And the ones that have the full car carrying people. Do you know how much we can use that information to reduce the traffic on our roads?
Wow. You know, this is all time would allow us. I think that we'll have to invite you back for some more conversations around this. But yeah, you got my juices flowing in all kinds of ways. I really appreciate the time spending with us. Well, we showcase the best minds on the executive line. And these for me are my 5 takeouts. Number 1 is that the fear of the unknown should not be the reason why you don't dream. When you dream, try it out. Go and do something. Dip your little finger or your toe in the water to check how cold or how hot it is. It is only by pushing the boundaries that we're able to break new ground. Number 2, technology is only a tool, it's neutral. It's how you use it. And so we shouldn't be afraid of exposing young people to new technology. We should rather focus on exposing them to new technology, but the right content in that space. Number 3 is that when you desire to do things, don't only think about how it helps you. I mean, Cecil's grown eCAMPUS to fix his own problem, but it's now available and aims to reach 1 billion learners across this continent. The 4th thing I'm taking away from this is passion. I mean, Cecil's passion is palpable. I'm sure you could tell that for yourself. And it is the fuel that you're always going to need to drive you. Your capacity, your abilities, that's the engine. But the fuel is passion. Finally, the thing I'm taking away from this conversation is that Africa is the biggest market. Technology is here to stay. The possibilities are endless. And you have a role to play. I hope this conversation has inspired you and got you thinking about all kinds of things and all kinds of ways that you can also impact positively on this continent. Thank you once again, Cecil.
Thank you, and happy 25th anniversary.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate that. So, it's always a great time when we come your way with the Executive Lounge where we showcase the best minds. Thanks to our friends at Villa Monticello and the crew, and to you for joining us. Until the next edition of the Executive Lounge, go forward, make rain. Shalom.